Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Cynical and welcome back to another video. Today for you guys, out of all things I want to talk about, it's Balan Wonderworld. Can you actually believe it? Neither can I. I didn't think I would be making any more content on Balan, but here I am. It is currently the 6th of July 2022, and I'm talking about this game again. I cannot even believe it. It was enough of an absolute physical and mental struggle to pull myself through that game. I can't even jump! And I'm deciding to talk about it once finishing it. I told myself I wouldn't do anything more towards Balan. There is additional content that becomes unlocked once you've wrapped up the game's main story. You've unlocked a secret third act. What does that mean, though? Wait a minute. Oh my god. Oh my god. No. 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 I'm done. I was due to do that, but I ultimately decided against it. I do care about my mental psyche. If I can try keep that intact as best possible, then I'm going to do what I can to support myself, and I don't think playing any more of Balan is going to help that. However, though, there has been something that, I've been thinking about a lot, and I just, for whatever reason, just can't stop thinking about it. And I really want to sort of express this in a video, is how out of place the final portion of Balan Wonderworld is, talking about the final boss fight. I also want to talk about the music here, because, like, it's literally one of the best tracks of music that I've heard, like, in a video game. Played a lot of good video games that have a lot of great soundtracks. And recently, I've been listening to the final boss theme, like, a lot, and it just got me thinking about that final boss of the game. It was a pretty decent final boss. I don't think, like, the mechanics or anything were anything too crazy, but for what the game is, like, absolute garbage. And then that final segment of the game was like, oh, okay, like, has a little bit of quality, like, sort of what happened. As you guys should know, Balan turned out to be, like, a complete disaster. It is one of Square Enix's worst rated games over on Metacritic. Obviously, at the moment, both Yuji Naka as well as Square Enix are in a court case due to Yuji Naka being fired from Square partway through Balan's development. Unfortunately, Yuji Naka doesn't really have a great track record either with being the easiest person to work with. He has, unfortunately, done some pretty sour things over the course of time. And recently, Yuji Naka took to Twitter and posted up a picture of the development team of Knights and intentionally blacked out Naoto Oshima, who is the designer for both Knights as well as Balan, who was apparently the person that ended up kicking him out of the team that was working on Balan. Yeah, there's some real beef going on right here, and it's very obvious that Yuji he's livid, man. He's gaslit. Anyway, we all know that Balan turned out to be an absolute disaster, but have you guys heard of this music theme in the final boss segment of the game? Because, oh my god. Balan is actually pretty good. Apart from those musical dance sequences. Like, look, okay, it's fine for, like, the first 3, but you've got to experience 13 of these! 13 of these! No! I won't! I will not! Fuck these! There are some tracks there that actually push me to the point of insanity, but for the most part, they are happy-go-lucky, chipper pieces of music. It was composed by Ryo Yamazaki, who has done work previously for both Kingdom Hearts as well as many different Final Fantasy games and games for Square Enix. He's got a pretty good track record, and I think he did a pretty good job with the score of Balan to really encompass the theme that that game goes for. The music, though, that is in this final boss fight really feels like it's something that belongs in, like, like either Kingdom Hearts or maybe even a Nier game. It feels like it was designed for specifically a JRPG. I was absolutely flabbergasted when I came across this track for the first time, and you know what, there was actually a small part of me that sort of thought, you know what, dude, it was actually sort of worth it, that you had to pull yourself through this absolute mud pie to then come in contact with this absolute eardrum goodness, because my god, were my eardrums being tickled. What's so funny though is, like, there is not one single piece of music throughout, like, any of the game that really is reminiscent whatsoever to that one specific track. And the other side that really made the final segment feel just so out of place was, for one, the boss fight was actually a decent boss fight. All of the boss fights throughout Balan Wonderworld are just an absolute snorefest. You expect the bosses to increase in difficulty as you progress through the game. That's generally how boss fights work. There's just simply no depth. The patterns are just simple repeats of, like, basically the exact same attacks. You pretty much just have to, like, smack something so that the enemy gets hit, then a weak point will come out, you then jump on that weak point, there's the damage, and you gotta do that 3 times. It's very simple. And also too, like, it's basically impossible to die on any of the normal boss fights throughout the game because there's always 2 outfit power-ups on the boss fight arena which are, like, required in order to actually damage the boss. And in case you guys don't know, when you have an outfit power-up, it counts as a hit point. The outfits will just simply respawn once you've picked them up in the boss fight arena, because without them, you can't finish the boss fight. It's stupid. Here in this final fight though, yeah, you can die. There ain't no outfits that are gonna help save the day. Some of the attack patterns might get, like, a little bit more tricky as you're inflicting damage, but when I say, like, a little bit more tricky, that's, like, basically just putting sauce on top of the chicken. It's still the same thing. There's just, like, an extra little condiment on there. No, I take that back, because putting a condiment on stuff usually sometimes enhances the flavor, and there is no flavor enhancement in any of these boss fights. So yeah, the final boss fight was actually just okay. It's not difficult by any means, even though I did actually lose my shit on that fight. Bruh! Oh my god, okay, the longer I've got to play this, the more my brain goes into the actual insanity abyss. No! Oh my, excuse me? What was that? You didn't whip that out, Luster. What the fuck was that? Mouth? Excuse me? What? But it was good. It was actually good to see that there was a really cool piece of content in this game. It's got 2 phases, which, by the way, all of the other fights don't have phases, which starts off with the main antagonist, Lance, just in his normal form. So you take him down in his first phase, and you think you've finished the game. Well, think again, young Timmy. This man, out of nowhere, decides to, like, digivolve, like, have, like, a literal mega digivolution right in front of you. And this man ends up turning into something you would expect to see out of, like, a Final Fantasy, maybe a Devil May Cry. Hell, I'll even go as far to say maybe even Dark Souls with the right texture palette applied to it. There is just, for some reason, this instant, like, loss of consistency when you get into the final segment of Balan. Suddenly, we've got a pretty half-what decent boss fight. The music all of a sudden changes up to some kind of, like, actually really decent JRPG track, and for some reason, the literal, like, character design, like, smacks you in the face and says, you know what, you thought you were used to this chibi-type, happy-go-lucky, colorful environment setting with cutesy-wootsy characters? Think again! Here's the king of the demons! Phase 2 literally starts off the main protagonist, like, dying, and you're like, oh, yes, okay, it's over. The pain and suffering is over. The character's been put to rest. Wait a minute, it doesn't end like that. What do you mean it doesn't end like that? I want this game to be done! Why am I even playing it? Let this pain be over! No, instead, like, all of the characters that you've helped out along the way lend you their power. The classic anime power friendship setup, or of course aka the Kingdom Hearts theme. Yeah, this comes in strong. You almost go like Balan Super Saiyan, and suddenly you start cycling through a lot of the different outfits and power-ups you've acquired throughout the game. It's kind of cool because all of the different attack patterns that the final boss is sort of throwing at you tries to incorporate attack patterns that you can use the costumes against in order to deal damage. Holy shit, did they actually properly think out a segment of this game? That is insanity. Well done! I was like actually goose slapped because it was almost like they had, I don't know, developed the final segment for the first thing that they did towards development for Balan Wonderworld, and then they just lost all drive and motivation and any sort of creative inspiration for like the rest of the game. Like, what happened? And you have to understand how absolutely jarring it is to see a design like this in Balan Wonderworld. When you look at the enemies of the game, which are known as the Nagati, which, by the way, these are just bootleg versions of the unversed from Kingdom Hearts. There's actually a lot of Kingdom Hearts themes throughout Balan Wonderworld. I'm not going to go into that right now, but it's very Kingdom Heartsy. Essentially, these beings have derived from the worries and the weaknesses of people's hearts, which, yeah, the unversed are basically just the negative emotions that have stemmed from people. It's the same thing. The designs of these are like just fine. They're like beings of darkness with these like masks on. Okay, whatever. And all of the bosses like throughout the game too aren't like, I don't know, demonic looking. They're all kind of like cartoony, happy-go-lucky. I think the boss designs are really cool, and that's what I said when playing through this game, but like there is just an instant design shift from this to this. Now that being said, I don't want this to come across as me being like, what the hell is this? Because I think this final boss design is actually really, really cool. I think I was just flabbergasted with this like instant change in consistency when you get to the final portion of the game. And I'm not by any means saying that Balan Wonderworld is worth having to put yourself through just to experience that last part of the game. One thing I really was happy about was that Balan Wonderworld really did end off on a good note. And that second phase of the fight when versing Mr. Demon Dragon King right there is actually the best part of the game. The unfortunate thing is, by the time you experience this part of the game, your nuts have been twisted so much by the infuriation of playing everything that comes before this point of the game, where it's really hard to enjoy it. Looking back on it now, like, yeah, that was solid. So, like, what happened to the rest of the game? It being explains that there were certain deadlines that Square Enix laid out to the development team, that the game had to be out by this point, and if it wasn't ready, fuck it, it's going out half-banked. We don't care if the chicken seasoning isn't on top of this potato. It's going out, seasoned or not. This is, of course, very one-sided because a lot of the issues that we've heard from Balan's development has come from Yuji Naka, who at the moment isn't the biggest fan of Square Enix. Honestly speaking, I could see throughout points of Balan Wonderworld that there were certain things that actually did have a lot of potential, and I feel like Balan as a whole had a lot of potential. There was just something that went very wrong there, and a lot of very strange and poor design and development decisions, especially with the whole two-button thing. There's one button that does literally every activation in the game, and there's an analog stick, well, I guess two, one to move and one to move the camera, but that's it. Like, every button does the same thing. That is just basic stuff. It worked well in Crash 1. You had to jump, you had to spin, and it turned out to be fantastic. That's literally two button inputs, but like here, it's just, my god, it's infuriating. And playing the game, you can really see like how it could have been done so much better. I think the costume system, super cool, but it could have been done so much better. Mix and match the costumes. Allow the player to actually customize these costumes in a manner that you can actually have like a 3 costume setup and design the levels around that exact design decision. Basically, you are welcome, because what I have shown you guys in this video is the absolute best part of Balan Wonderworld. That final boss segment, very cool. As well as one of the coolest pieces of video game music I think I've heard. That like little piano key sequence that comes up in it. Oh my god, it's so good! There were some other things in here that, you know, I did like the CG cinematics are simply beautiful. They are gorgeous, as well as like the character designs. I loved all of the boss designs, as well as like Balan as a character, I think is really cool. Also, the actual story of this game is okay. It can be like a little bit weird and cheesy at times, but it tries to focus on the concept of like happiness, and it starts off with a character that is unhappy about a certain thing or a problem that they are facing. These are all very real world problems, and then by the end of you finishing a world and defeating that boss that corresponds to that character, you've basically brought them out of their dark despair and they are now happy again. It's just the way the entire game was executed, it was just so piss poor that unfortunately we ended up with a really bad product. I think the most disappointing thing about Balan Wonderworld for me personally is I was really wanting this to work. I was excited to know that Square Enix were giving a platformer a crack. Visually, the game is great, the designs were great. I think at first seeing all of the trailers and stuff showed a bit of promise to this game. It certainly had a certain charm to it and quite a uniqueness, but as soon as that demo dropped and the feedback towards the game started to sort of dribble out, yeah, I guess all hope was lost, and that's probably why it wasn't up until recently that I finally decided to try this out and experience the pain and torture for myself. It's disappointing because I really wanted Square Enix to have an IP that was known as a platformer and not an RPG. When it comes to Square Enix, the games that they execute really well is RPGs. They are RPG randies. And like, it frustrates me because instead of Balan Wonderworld, they could have done something with Gex. At this point, obviously, they still had the Gex IP. They've recently sold off the Gex IP, so they no longer have it. They could have done something with Gex. Though, that being said, let's say it got the same treatment as Balan, it then would have stained Gex's reputation. So in a way, maybe we've dodged a bullet there, I don't know. But it is disappointing to see that this didn't work, because I definitely do believe that Balan did have potential. There were just a lot of things here that went quite wrong. Now guys, that is all for today's video. This is something that has been on my mind for like whatever reason. Yeah, Balan has been literally plaguing my brain since I experienced it. Now guys, I'm Cynical, hopefully you're having a fantastic day, and I'll catch you dudes real soon. Peace.